Hi everyone, welcome to Accessibility with Meg. This is Meg, and we are continuing reading the WCAG 2 documents by W3C, and we did complete the accessibility fundamentals overview until yesterday. Today we're going to go further, open another document that we can continue to read. So we can either go in and do this document, which is the quick reference document. It's very detailed, and it is the entire WCAG 2.0, 2.1, 2.2 standards, and all the principles, all the guidelines, all the success criteria related to it within this document. We can start with this, or I can go back to the accessibility fundamentals, and we are still to read about accessibility about the people. It's about people. Maybe this document, this section can be explored. So I think maybe we can do this section first and then go to the WCAG details pages. So accessibility, it's about people, is what we will read today. So let's get reading. Accessibility, it's about people. Accessibility is about ensuring that digital technology is usable by people with disabilities. Checklists, standards, and laws are important tools to help achieve accessibility. Yet sometimes they get the focus instead of the fundamental goal of accessibility, which is meeting the needs of disabled people in the real world. Pausing to read. So, while accessibility contains things like checklists, that contains things like standards, it contains things like laws, which can be examples like the AODA, AMA, ACA, the European laws, etc. All of this is a part and parcel of accessibility. There are there's so many pieces to it, but the most important component in accessibility are the people. It is meeting the needs of disabled people in the world. Continuing to read. Many Y resources cover the organizational, technical, and standards aspect of accessibility. The following Y resources help you understand the people aspects. Pausing to read. So here are listed a few resources which we can go through for understanding the people aspect of accessibility better. The first document, Web Accessibility Perspectives, explore the impact and benefits for everyone. It has videos that illustrate accessibility, essential for some, useful for all. Learn about the impact of accessibility on people with disabilities and benefits for everyone in a variety of situations. Pages include supporting information, 10 one-minute videos, and a 7-minute compilation. I remember we went through this, so we'll not go into it now. Let's move to the next one, which says how people with disabilities use the web. This document or resource, it provides user stories, personas of people with different disabilities, describes tools and approaches that people use to browse the web and barriers that they encounter due to poor design. Includes videos that illustrate accessibility. It's about people. So let's go into this document, which is how people with disabilities use the web, and explore this further. We're in the document, continuing to read. How people with disabilities use the web. Accessibility is about people. How do people who cannot move their arms use a website? What about people who cannot see well? or at all, or people who have difficulty hearing or understanding or have other disabilities. This resource introduces how disabled people use the web, including people with age-related impairments. It helps developers, designers, content creators, and others understand the reasons behind creating accessible digital products, including websites, apps, browsers, and other web tools. Sections in this resource. Stories of web users, also called personas, represent the experiences of people with different disabilities. Diverse abilities and disabilities. Barriers introduces the wide diversity of abilities and highlights some accessibility barriers that people experience because of inaccessible digital technology. Lastly, tools and techniques, which covers the tools and techniques that disabled people use to interact with digital technology. And then there is this section with related WCAG resources. We just went through in the previous few days, we went through the accessibility principles, which introduces the 4 principles used to organize accessibility requirements and provides examples of requirements related to each principle from the International Accessibility Standards from the W3C Web Accessibility Initiative, or WCAG. And then there is the Web Accessibility Perspectives videos. So explore the impact and benefits for everyone. It presents a collection of short videos highlighting accessibility features that are essential to people with disabilities and useful for all. Let's go into the first resource, which is the stories of web users. This is a part of the Accessibilities About People document, Stories of Web Users, in how people with disabilities use the web. Accessibility, it's about people. The following user stories represent the experiences of some people with disabilities. They do not address all disabilities or all impacts faced by people with disabilities. These and other disabilities may be present from birth and may develop as a result of an accident, illness, or aging. The first persona, or the first user story. Addy, reporter with limited use of his arms. Addy was involved in an accident, that caused a spinal cord injury, leaving him with limited use of his arms. He often relies only on the keyboard to navigate websites and other digital content. There is a link to his persona. We will click this link and see that there is a detailed explanation of this persona. Addy is a reporter who has limited use of his arms. He has several strategies for navigating websites, including using his palm to operate a joystick, using one finger to press keys in the keyboard, which allows him to move up and down the page and tap from link to link, and more recently using speech recognition methods. All of these methods, however, have drawbacks. When using the joystick, it is hard to click on small targets such as placing the cursor between words or at the end of a sentence. When using a keyboard, it's sometimes hard to know which page element has focus, plus the order of the links often doesn't match what he sees when looking at the page. Speech recognition has promise, but it involves a whole new way of working to someone who is used to typing. So that Ade can switch from one method to the other, it is important to make sure links and other page elements have visual focus indicators and match the order that they appear on the page, and that content flows correctly when the site is zoomed to make everything appear larger. So this is the story of Ade, who's a reporter, and he has very limited use of his arms. So to navigate, like it says over here, he uses a joystick, or he uses his finger to press the keys on the keyboard, or he uses speech recognition. And as explained beautifully, all of these have their limitations, and accessibility is about helping Ade overcome these limitations to be able to access the content effectively, right? So if you look at the bottom here, there is a section with the page contents, and it tells you about Ade, barrier examples, assistive technologies and adaptive strategies used, relative Y resources, related principles, and a video. Note, this user story is an example of a person with this type of disability. Other people with this disability may have different experiences. Pausing to read. That's such an important line. People with disabilities, every person has a different experience. Some people may have the same disability as another person, but their experience of how they use the internet is totally different from the person with the same disability, right? So the people form a very important part of accessibility, and trying to make websites accessible for different experiences is very, very important. Okay, and this story is about one type of disability, but there are people with this type of disability that may have a totally different user story, right? So let's go further and read about this. About Ade. It's not like I can't use a keyboard or pointer. I just can't use them for long periods because it is tiring. Ade was involved in an accident which caused spinal cord injury. This left him with limited use of his arms and no movement or sensation in his legs. He has worked as a reporter for many years. Ade sometimes uses a keyboard with larger keys to help him to more easily hit the correct key and a joystick instead of a mouse. However, using these for extended periods can be so tiring. So he has started using speech recognition software for some tasks, such as dictating long pieces. Rather than using his fingers, Ade uses the palm of his hand to operate the joystick that has an enlarged lever. This can be inaccurate to use, particularly when pointing to and clicking on some small areas. When this happens, he sometimes switches to using the keyboard for navigation. He can use the tab key to move through links and form elements. When using the keyboard, Ade has found that on some sites he couldn't see which field or link had focus. He also found that sometimes the links weren't in a logical order, which made it hard to find the element he was interested in. He could always use his joystick, but that can interrupt his flow and slow him down. Sites often include good visual styling when you hover over a link, but sometimes don't include this when the link has keyboard focus. For adding, it is important that websites clearly show which link has the current focus and to navigate through links in a logical order, that is, following the visual order of links on the page. Pausing to read. So they're talking about here things like a focus indicator, having a proper focus indicator in place, also having proper reading order, logical reading order within the document or the website. Reading further. When using a keyboard, Ade has found some features which really help. For example, a skip link that moves focus past all the navigation on the page is a big help. Ade tries to avoid sites that do not have this feature. However, it limits his research sources a bit. Pausing to read. So when you are using the keyboard and navigating with the keyboard, your reading order is very important. It needs to be logical. Your focus indicator is very important. It needs to be clear where your focus is at that moment. Also, a very important aspect is to have what we call skip links, which are hidden links within a web page which become active when you're tabbed into when the screen reader accesses it. A skip link will allow you to skip a whole section of content that's repeated. For example, in the header, the header is repeated on every page in a website sometimes, and mostly actually. And when that happens, you don't want to go through the header content every time, right? So you provide a skip link that when the user clicks on that, he can jump straight to where the content starts to appear, the actual content, right? So it jumps to the main content. So that's what they're talking about here. Reading further, Ade has started using speech control software, which helps him to avoid having to use the joystick and keyboard. The software allows him to select and click on links by speaking, but only when the links are clear and coded correctly. The software also has a speech-to-text dictation feature. As someone who has spent years typing out his articles, Ade is having to train himself in a new way of working. He would still prefer to type as he thinks it's much slower with dictation, but he is hopeful that the speed will improve. Outside of work, Ade finds his mobile device easier to use than his computer because there is limited navigation and no pointer device. Since it is handheld, he has more options to place it in a position that he is comfortable with. He wishes his employer could create a mobile-friendly or responsive website that he could use for his job. So you see that there is a person with a particular disability. In this case, he is unable to use his hands as easily as he wants to. And that disability has created so many barriers for him, right? So many, there is need to make it accessible in so many different ways. So we're going to understand some barrier examples for this user story. Reading further, barrier examples. Focus styling barrier. When I tab through links and form fields, there is no visual styling to show me which element I am on, right? This is the focus indicator missing issue. And what works well, there is a clear and strong visual styling for links and form fields when they receive focus. Okay. The next example, reading, process time outs barrier. What is the barrier? I usually take much longer to complete long forms or processes and often get timed out. What works well for this barrier? at the start of the long former process, I am told that there is a timeout and given the option to set it to be slightly longer. Makes sense, right? I mean, if you know that something has a timer and you also know that some people might use longer time to use it, giving them an option to be able to set a longer timer is important. So instead of 20 minutes, giving them an option of adding 40 minutes to finish whatever document they're filling out or whatever it is that they're working with is important. Okay. The next barrier, saving progress barrier. Completing long forms with no way to save progress and take a break can be tiring. What works well? I have the option to save progress and take a break when completing long multi-step forms, like when I have to get a code in email or text and type it in. This is a very important barrier that you do see. Sometimes when you are filling out applications for a job, you have these long applications. They are like so many tabs and so many pages long that you definitely need to have a way to save progress because you may not be able to finish that entire document at the same time. You want to come back to it at a later time and complete it, right? So that is an example and very, very required. Otherwise, it's a huge barrier. The next barrier they're talking about is pop-up windows barrier. So the barrier when the window opens and I can't close it. Using only the keyboard, it can be difficult. So what works well? New windows have a close icon that I can access using keyboard, and some include the option to press the escape key to close them. So we see this for pop-ups or for mostly for pop-ups, and you know that when you're inside of that pop-up, we also see this in submenus. So when you open, like it's a panel menu, and when that panel is open, sometimes you don't have a way to come out of that panel and you're stuck within it. Okay, so that's a huge barrier. So the way to come out of it should be very simple. You should be able to press the escape key and close that panel. You need to have it's actually a close button, usually an X on the right top corner, so they can close that window very easily by using that button. Not having a way to come out of the dialog box or that panel or that situation is a keyboard trap. And we will see all of these when we go through each of the success criteria in the WCAG 2.x documentation, right? Right now, we're just understanding all of this with these scenarios or these user stories. Moving further, assistive technologies and adaptive strategies used. Things like accelerators, alternative keyboard and mouse for input, speech recognition for input, word prediction for input, keyboard navigation for interaction, and skip links for interaction. We see there is a video for speech recognition, a tip which says use headings to convey meaning and structure. Another tip which says make link text meaningful. Tip ensure that interactive elements are easy to identify. Tip associate a label to every form control. Tip ensure that all interactive elements are keyboard accessible. And there is a check which is keyboard access and visual focus. Check to check for the forms, labels, and errors. Okay. All of this will become clear as we go through the WCAG documentation for 2.0, 2.1, and 2.2. So I will not go into the details of each of these, but it's good to read through these. Okay, and then related principles. So Perceivable, like we said, perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. These are the four principles or the four pillars on which WCAG 2.x stands, right? So what are the related principles for this particular persona or user story? Perceivable, text alternatives for non-text content. So you need to have text alternatives for images, graphics, audio, like media, audio files, just anything that's non-text. They need to have appropriate text alternatives. That's a part of perceivable principle. Content must be presented in different ways. This is again perceivable principle. So if you have content that's presented, say, as an audio file, you need to have a text transcript for that. So that's another way to access it. You need to have captions within a video, like a video, so that it can be understood and read. And that's another way to present your content. So content has to be presented in different ways, the same content in different ways, so people with different sensibilities can access it. That's again perceivable. Okay. Functionality is available from a keyboard, operable. We saw that. It's very important that a keyboard only access be made available, because people may not be using mouses. They may not be using other assistive devices to access the website. So keyboard works for most of the assistive devices that are used, right? So it has to be available via keyboard. Users have enough time to read and use the content. This is again operable, so there is enough time given for comprehension, given for how to use the content. If there is a timer, the ability to extend that timer is very important. The next one is users can easily navigate, find content, and determine where they are. That's very important. Predictability is very, very important. Also, the ability to find content directly without having to go through a bunch of code or content is required. And at all times, the user has to be aware of where they are. So there should be ways to identify where they are and they should be informed of any contextual changes. They should be informed of any dynamic changes on the web page. Then content appears and operates in predictable ways. We've gone through that. This is understandable principle where your content should be clean, simple, clear, and it should be accessible and any repeated content has to be predictable on the pages, right? Users are next reading. Users are helped to avoid and correct mistakes. This is understandable again. So if there are any errors, the error should be identified. Yes, the error should be informed to the user, and the error should have a way to be corrected. Actually, it should clearly tell you what the error message is and what are the steps and instructions to be able to solve or resolve that error, right? So that has to be very clear, because we need to understand that when people are accessing the internet, they are coming to it in different ways and with different modalities, right? So it's important. In this particular user case, when you say users are helped to avoid and correct mistakes, we are talking also about like your target area has to be larger so they can click it more easily. That helps them to avoid clicking in other places. Also, if something has been clicked, like a delete button has been clicked by mistake, there has to be a pause wherein it asks for whether they are sure they want to delete that. So they have to be informed. There has to be a way to undo these happenings as well. Okay. Content is compatible with current and future user tools, and that's the robust part of it. And then there is a video for A11y. We can quickly watch this video. It's not very long. It's a 2-minute video. So let's go through this video, and we will let's go through this video. And before we go through the video, you can see over here, there is a text transcript with description of visuals, which is your text alternative. And it tells you about this video. There is audio here, and all of the audio content is written out. Also, there is a visual which describes what's being shown on the video, right? So this is a very nice way to display your alternative information or alt text. Okay, let's play the video.
How people with disabilities use digital technology. A11y, reporter with limited use of his arms.
Hello, I'm A11y. I'm quadriplegic, which means I have limited movement in my arms as well as in my legs. The technology I use is really important to me. I use a lot of keyboard shortcuts, especially for the programs that I use often. For example, scrolling a page is much easier with the arrow keys on the keyboard than by clicking on that button in the scroll bar. Unfortunately, many websites and apps don't work well with my keyboard. Often, what has focus isn't clear or jumps around completely out of order. Sometimes that doesn't work well because some websites and apps don't work in landscape orientation, which is how I set up my tablet so that the buttons are big enough for me to click. While I can use a keyboard and joystick, I can't use them for long periods because it's tiring. So I recently started using speech control software as well. It allows me to dictate text instead of typing and to say certain commands instead of clicking. It's really hard to learn a new way of working after so many years, but I've been patient with it and I'm slowly getting used to it. The most difficult thing is buttons without labels. It's not clear which voice command would activate them. You can help make technology accessible to me.
Accessibility. It's about people. For more information from the Web Accessibility Initiative on how people with disabilities use digital technology, visit w3.org/WAI/people.
So we will stop with this user story, and we will continue tomorrow with the others. And I just want to say that all of the content that I am showing in my videos, these are all copyright to W3C. I'm just using their content for learning purposes and to share whatever I understand with anybody who can find this beneficial, because it is a ocean, it is huge, and definitely going through it like this is helping me, and I feel it will help somebody like me to understand this better. So thank you so much, and if you could please subscribe, like, share. Subscribing would really help me. So if you could please subscribe to my channel if you're enjoying the content or you're using this in some way. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in another video. Bye-bye.